Hey guys, this is my first like actual official video here on YouTube. So, I thought I might as well play some Hypixel Skywars. Spoiler alert, I suck at Hypixel Sky- Oh, Jesus Christ, that's loud. Oh, I usually play with the archer kit first because I like shooting people. But I'm not. And really, the main reason I'm making this video is because I have a story I want to tell. And that story is of my middle school Spanish teacher. Now, her name was, we'll just call her Senorita because she was a senorita, and she sucked. I hated her so much. Like, I thoroughly suck at Skywars though, like legit. I'm gonna die. What? See, look, see, I suck. Anyways, so Senorita, so she was one of the meanest people I've ever met. I sucked at Spanish, but I wasn't like horrible to the point where, like I couldn't, like, I wasn't keeping up with class, because I was one of, I like to think I was one of the better students. And she just hated me for who knows why. Apparently when I was younger, I'd go to my mother after school and I'd cry and I'd go, Mother, please, she bullies me again. And my mother would call her up and be like, hey, my daughter says you were mean to her again. Why? And she would be like, oh no, I love her. She's like one of my favorite students. And I'm like, bull. And we know that. God. And she would be like, oh no, she's like one of my favorite students. I do not hate her. She's like the best. Like, I was a good kid. Like, I've been a good kid since like birth. I listen to teachers. That's pretty much it. But like, it's not like I am disruptive or anything. I'm a good kid in my standard. Like, I could be worse. Could be a lot worse, you know? So, funny story from about like 7th grade. She would, we were taking notes. And this is stuff like she would teach the same thing every year, which, I mean, props on you. You don't actually have to teach anything new. I accidentally threw that. But props on you for that one. But we never learned anything, like, ever. I cannot name one thing. The only thing I know how to do is say the Hail Mary in Spanish. But, see, I don't really know what I'm saying. I never learned how to speak Spanish, you know? God. Okay. So I was taking notes on the exact same thing that we've taken notes on like multiple times already. And she sees me taking notes on the exact same sheet of paper from like 4th grade. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, taking notes? And apparently that was not the right answer at all. The answer she was looking for was taking notes, but not the way I was doing it. She's like, no, you need a brand new like piece of paper. And I'm like, why? This is the same thing we've covered previously before. That makes like no sense. And she's like, just do it. And I'm like, no. So when she saw me like playing the game, like not playing the game, Jesus, what? So when she saw me taking notes with that, she was obviously not very happy that I was being a good student, you know? So what I had to do was take a brand new thing on a brand new sheet of paper for some unknown reason. It's not like we learned anything in that class. Another funny story happened, I guess, around the same time. I do not remember. But it happened as well, where after a test I was reading a book. And it happened to be an anime book, because I'm a nerd. So I'm reading my anime book just very peacefully. I'm not causing like any problems. Sir, this is why you're adopted. So I was reading my anime book, but now that I really think about it, really was not an anime book. It was the Hatsune Miku Project Diva book. Any of you guys know what it is, and I highly doubt it. But I was reading that after a test, and usually we're allowed to read. So I'm like, okay, no problem. And so I'm reading. I'm literally not doing anything. And she just comes and she grabs my book out of my hand. And I'm like, what? You do not have the authority for that. And she did it anyways. So, I mean, good for her. Last story of this specific teacher was, it was 8th grade, and 8th grade they allow you to be exempt from a test if you have an A in the class. Like, you just don't have to take it. And so I'm like, okay, I have like only, I think, one test I have to take. God, I suck. The one test I knew for sure I had to take was math, because I had a 90 in the class, and some of you guys may be like, wait, didn't you just say you had to have an A in the class? Yeah, but this was a private school, meaning you had to have a 93 instead of like just a regular, normal 90. And I mean, I was pretty close. God. So I was in class and she was like talking about the exam, and so me, I had like my grades on my watch because I have an Apple Watch because I'm a rich kid like that, you know, but an Apple Watch, and so I'm like, okay, let's see, like, what's my grade? So I checked. No fun. God, okay, I suck. This is nothing new. Watch this, guys. Wait. Anyways, anyway, so I was calculating my grade on my calculator out, and I'm calculating in Spanish class. And then she stops, and she looks at me with the wrath of God in her eyes. She goes, Kennedy, what are you doing? I'm like, ma'am, I'm calculating my grade. Oh. So as she looked at me with the wrath of God, I replied with the fear of God in my soul, like, I was calculating my grade. And she was like, oh yeah? So what's your grade? And I'm like, it's like, it's a 93.333, repeating. And because obviously I was terrified of her. And no, she wasn't like, what are you doing? She's like, what are you doing? Like, no, that sounds Russian. She was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, you know, just calculate my grade. And she just was so mean like that. So she was like, so you're very close to failing my class. And I'm like, I would not put it that way. But when you say it like that, yeah, sure, I guess I am. And so she's like, well, you better be paying attention because you're most likely going to have to take the test. And I'm like, wow, that's like the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. But yeah, my Spanish teacher was just horrible. Any self-respecting, like, a functioning adult would know that this would have no further impact on that child's life in the future. Right? Yeah, completely right. So when my art teacher was out, because she was out, and one of the schools, my high school substitute teachers came to, like, watch over the class. She just let us kind of do whatever we want. Actually, like, let us get on our phones because phones are not allowed at all. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's probably really dumb to drink, but thank you. Oh, I won. Holy crap, I actually won. So when this Spanish teacher, I'll call her Becky, came to watch over my art class, she just let us do whatever we wanted. Some girls like started doing like TikTok dances, and I knew one of the girls from like childhood, and so I kind of recorded it. I posted like on tiny TikTok. I don't have any followers because I was just bored. And the girl who I recorded was like, "Oh my god, did you record that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, and like we laughed it off, like it was funny. And she's like, "Kennedy, uh, stay after the bell." And I'm like, "Oh god." And so I'm sitting there like, "Is this where I die?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe." The answer was yes. So she looks at me and she's like, "So why did you record them?" And I'm like, it was funny." She's like, "Well, you recorded them without their permission." And I said, she's like, do you know her?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do." I'm like, "Yeah, I know her. I know. We grew up in the same neighborhood." And she's like, "Okay, just don't do that. Like, don't record someone without their consent." And so she has like a Spanish accent. And because of my old Spanish teacher, I was just sitting there like my eyes wide. My heart was pounding and racing. I was like, "Oh god." I'm like, this is where I die." And after she was done, she was like, "Are you okay? You look like you just seen a ghost." So I was like, "Oh yeah, my old Spanish teacher used to verbally harass me and berate me for doing literally nothing wrong." And so whenever someone like with a slight Spanish accent like speaks to me as if I've done something wrong, I start crying because it just makes me cry because that was a terrifying experience for little me to go through. So she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and she gave me a hug. See, that's what Spanish teachers do. They lure you into a false sense of security, and then that's when they hurt you the most. I suck at Skyblock, so I mean not Skyblock, God, Skywars. So now we're here. But so a week or something ago, I had email her. I'm like, "Hey, can I have a fun fact about you for a computer science project where we had like write a code like a yes, the faculty member like say like it's like Akinator thing, like literally it was that." And so I emailed her. It was her and like another Spanish teacher who I've never encountered before, and like a few other people who I did not have facts for. Like my computer science teacher already gave us some facts for some teachers, but it was our responsibility to go email them. It was our responsibility at like to email the rest of them like, "Hey, can we have a fun fact about you?" So I did that. I was like, I BBC'd them, so I didn't like actually like, say any of their names in the email. So I was like, "Hi, can I please have a fun fact?" It was also like the night before the project was due. I'm so sorry, it is last minute. This also was on fall break. I'm like, "I'm sorry, I was enjoying my fall break. You know it is." And I'm like, if possible, can I get it before tomorrow morning before class?" And I thought that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. So the morning comes and only one teacher had emailed me back out of the 5 I emailed. And I'm like, wow. And one of them was the Spanish teacher who had substituted, I think I said Becky, whatever, who had substituted my thing. And so I'm like, okay, she's a Spanish teacher. What was I expecting? So I have a friend named Nacho, right? It's not a real name. He's from Spain, and so sometimes he talks to the Spanish teacher. So me, Nacho, and Kaylee. We were all sitting together, and she comes up and starts talking with Nacho. And then she sees me. She goes, I have something to say to you, girl." And I'm like, "Oh no." Already happened before this was my teacher sent me an email saying, "Hey, I've gotten multiple emails saying that your email was rude, and like it was incredibly ill received. Like they thought you were rude and that you were just demanding." And I'm like, "Oh, I wish they had told me this or taken this up with me instead of like ratting me out to my teacher." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, that was not my intent." And she's like, "Oh, I know, I'm just letting you know." And I'm like, "Great. Dang, I'm usually good at this game. But telling a story, I guess." So I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And I'm just sitting there like, "Oh god, what is she gonna do? She's gonna yell at me in front of everyone." And I'm here thinking the worst. My heart's beating. I'm like, this is not good. This is not a good situation for me. And then she's like, "Okay." She's like, she turns to me, she goes, "Do you have anything to say to me?" I'm like, huh? Like, do you have anything to say to me? I'm so sorry. My email came off as rude. That was not my intent. She's like, no, 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 no. She's like, I know it wasn't, but it did. She's like, you could have been a lot nicer in the email. I'm like, I could have also just emailed you and been like, give me a fact set for my iPhone. I could have totally done that, but no, it had like, I even like put sincerely and everything. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. My email came off as rude. Like, yeah, she's like, if you had put please or thank you anywhere in there, I would have sent you one right immediately, but because you didn't, you don't get it. And by the way, this was a project grade in computer science. I needed this woman's fact like a week ago. And I had no clue who she was, really. And so I'm sitting there like, so sorry. And I'm like, if you're that petty over a student like not putting please in an email where all you don't interact with a student and all they need is a fun fact from you, and you're that worked up over it, like what? And so I'm just like, okay, this is fine. This is completely fine. I got a 95.75. What the 0.25 was off, I have no idea. But, I mean, I didn't fail the project, fortunately. I thought I was going to fail because I forgot I didn't have... You had to put 20 teachers in there, I believe. So, I had most of them. You think that your terrible teaching probably would not leave like a lasting mental effect on your students, but it really does. Well, thank you guys so much for watching an episode, I guess, of party game Skywars, or just me telling a stupid story over it. Let me know if you guys like it. Yeah, I don't really know what else to post, so I kind of wanted to post something. Thank you guys so much for watching. Also, check out my Twitch. I stream there. I stream Minecraft mostly over there. Sometimes Genshin Impact. I think you guys will like it. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.